I think it was very close within the first few days of the war being declared. Dad immediately joined up, as did his younger brother as soon as he was old enough to join up. And he had two other brothers that eventually got old enough and joined up the army too. So there were 4 out of the 6 of them joined up. I'm one of 8 children, and out of the 4 boys and 4 girls, Bert joined the Air Force and was, as I say, killed in Canada, and I idolised him too. I get a bit emotional. So when I was old enough to join, I sort of had to talk my mum around to signing papers and things, and to join the army. And I was in the 22nd Infantry Battalion. Brother Jack, as soon as he was old enough, he joined the Air Force. Then Brother Rex, as I say, as soon as he turned 17, he did this officers training school at Portsea, and came out as an officer when he was 18. So that's the boys' side of the family. The girls didn't join the services, although they all married ex-servicemen. And 2 of them married 2 ex-servicemen or servicemen. When the big fight came on in Gallipoli at Lone Pine, Dad transferred to the 7th Battalion from the headquarters division, so he could go up and fight at Lone Pine. And on the night of the big battle, Dad was wounded about 9 or 10 o'clock at night or something, I think it was. And they carried him down the beach, where he laid there for 24 hours waiting for a place on one of the hospital ships out in the bay. So eventually he got on that and went back to Egypt into hospital. There weren't many of them alive that next morning, and 4 of them got VCs. He said to me, and I can remember this, I was only, probably 4 or 5 years old. I didn't even know what a VC was, and he said, Rusty, he said, if I'd have lasted till the morning, I'd have got a VC. His records read that he went to a headquarters unit for a while, and then he transferred out of that into the 9th Field Engineers because he wanted to get back into the action. He actually dropped his sergeant stripes again to go back as a sapper, and he went to the Western Front with the engineers, and had a pretty hard time of it there. And there's a story, and I can't provide any evidence or proof of it at all. But this was Dad's story. He was walking back to the lines one night from the front after being out there, and he walked past some big brass, and he didn't salute. The big brass's aide-de-camp pulled Dad up, and he said, and gave him a bit of a dressing down, and said, why didn't he salute? Dad said, if you'd been where I've been for the last 48 hours without any sleep and fighting, he says, you wouldn't be saluting anybody either. So the officer then again started to give Dad a dressing down, and the senior officer that should have been saluted said, just a moment to his aide-de-camp, and questioned Dad about what he'd been and what he'd done during the war up to this juncture. And he said, asked Dad what he would like to do, and Dad said, well, I'd like to join the Australian Flying Corps. And so he was asked his name and rank and army number, and said, right, we've got that information, now you can go back to the back lines again, which Dad did. And sometime later he got notification that he was to attend Queen's College at Oxford University for training to be an Australian Flying Corps pilot, which he accomplished and was finished up the war, the last several months of the war in the Australian Flying Corps. And of course Dad again had joined up as soon as war broke out, the Second World War broke out. Dad joined up again. And I suspect from this you'll gather the type of fellow he was. He was a gung-ho fellow, and he wanted to be where the action was and where things were, and looked to be doing something good. As a matter of fact, it was one of Dad's. I didn't get to come home on leave very often in the 4.5 years I was in the army, but each time I did, Dad just looked and saw my 2 stripes, which I'd got after about a few months in the army, and 4 years later I was still walking around with 2 stripes on my arm. That didn't impress Dad too much at all. I suspect that when we were growing up, if Dad had had his way, we'd have come into our meals at the bugle call, the mess bugle call, and we'd have lightened up and we'd have saluted him at our lunches. I was in the 22nd Infantry Battalion, and not long after I joined the army, I found myself in the horse stalls at Caulfield Racecourse. On the ground, on duckboards in the horse stables, there was our sleeping quarters. And at this very same stage, my father was also billeted in Caulfield Racecourse. And this is a bit of a giggle actually. His quarters were in the ladies' toilets at Caulfield Racecourse. And to this juncture, I hadn't been in the army long, I'd never ever saluted him. And because he was an officer and I was this stage still a private. And of course you're supposed to salute the officer every time you see him. And of course, if I saw Dad coming one way, I'd duck around another way. Never ever saluted him until years ago when he was at Land Army headquarters in Swanson, up in Swanson Street. Brother Jack, that was in the Air Force, he was on leave, happened to be on leave in Melbourne the same time as I was, and we needed to see him about something, and I said, righto Jack, we'll go in and front him and bung him one, which meant a salute. And I think it was one of the happiest days in his life when 2 of his sons walked up to his desk to see Captain Rowe and bunged him a salute, because a smile went from ear to ear on his face that his siblings had, or his sons had actually, walked up and saluted him. I suspect, without really knowing, I suspect Mum put pressure on Dad to get me organised out of this 22nd Infantry Battalion that finished up going to up to New Guinea, and I went up to the Territory, didn't I? And then we sailed off to Bougainville up in the Solomon Islands, and Guadalcanal and all those nasty areas, and I was seasick 24 hours a day when I was at sea. As soon as I got back on the land, I was right again. To be strafed is probably my worst army experience. When you've got on that thing I just showed you, the machine guns on that have a steel sheet in front of them that you were standing behind. On our ship, we just had the bare gun. And to have a plane coming at you, strafing you, and you've got nowhere to hide, bullets zipping off a steel deck all around you, I tell you, it's the most frightening thing that could ever happen. And you just had to stand there and fire back. I can't as I say, and yet I think I'm lucky, or was lucky, in that I didn't have hand-to-hand fighting at ground level. So, you know, as I say, don't profess to be a hero or anything else, but there were some very, very difficult times.